At dusk, Prince Xian and Prince Mu left the study together, with Yang Shishir following behind them. As soon as Yang Shishir went out, she found an excuse and left for a while. Chu Xianqi looked at the sky and had no intention of leaving Prince Mu to have a meal here. It was getting late, and Prince Xian's mansion and Prince Mu's mansion were separated by several avenues. He hoped to send someone to send Prince Mu back before nightfall. The atmosphere in the imperial city has been good in the past 2 years. Some petty thieves and thieves have no way of living here at all, and most of them have left. Prince Mu smiled lightly and patted his shoulder. Thanks to Cheer's achievements in the past few years, nowadays, most of the small countries encountered by Zhou and Lei are keeping to themselves, and there are a lot less things happening in the imperial city. So there is no need to worry even if you go out at night. Although Uncle Sixth Emperor has powerful martial arts, he holds an important position after all. So it is better to be cautious. Chu Xianqi said calmly, there seems to be some instability in the imperial city recently. Uncle Emperor should be more careful. I understand. He also knew a little about Wu Ming's entry into the city. However, although he held an important position, he always considered himself to be fair in dealing with matters. Not to mention that he had never participated in the several factions in the court. Among them, if one could afford a killer like Wu Ming, the one he would have to deal with would probably not be an irrelevant person like him. Chu Xianqi suddenly said, Dongfang Ming. My subordinates are here. Dongfang Ming emerged from nowhere and arrived in front of them in the blink of an eye. He bowed to Prince Mu and said, See you, Your Majesty. Prince Mu nodded slightly. Order the 12 cavalry to escort the 6th Emperor's uncle back to his home. Yes. In a flash, the figure disappeared again. Prince Mu frowned and said with a hint of surprise. Cheer, do you need to move the 12 riders? It's just a trip back home. But it's too much to ask people from the 12 riders to escort him. Isn't it too exaggerated? You must know that the people of the 12 riders have always done big things. Not particularly important things, and there is no need for them at all. Anyway, we will have nothing to do after we return to the imperial city. So why not exercise our muscles and bones? However, Chu Xianqi insisted and personally sent him out. 4 of the 12 riders were guarding the gate. After watching him leave, Chu Xianqi returned to the courtyard with Dongfang Ming. Your Majesty, are you worried about Wu Ming? Dongfang Ming stopped mid-sentence when he saw Yang Shishir walking towards them with light steps. Your Majesty. Yang Shishir, who was completely finished, came to Chu Xianqi shyly and said softly, Your Majesty, the Queen Mother ordered me to stay and serve Your Majesty well. I really want to stay? Henry Chu raised his eyebrows. Something seemed to be flowing in his bright star eyes. Hearing that he seemed to have a soft attitude, Yang Shishir's eyes suddenly flashed with excitement, and she nodded hurriedly, Your Majesty. Your Majesty is unparalleled, and being able to serve him is. It is Shishir's blessing that she is cultivated for several lifetimes. Shishir will definitely serve her with all her heart in the future. Okay, follow me. He walked in front, and the breeze blew, lifting his black clothes, fluttering. And it was really beautiful. Yang Shishir suddenly became drunk again and followed him subconsciously. Deep inside the courtyard gate, Chu Xianqi suddenly turned around and said loudly, Here comes someone. A dozen secret guards immediately came to him. Dongfang Ming touched his nose and stepped aside, Let Fei Jing come over. The brothers winked, and some people left immediately. Not long after, Fei Jing, who was wearing a tough texture, came to everyone. Saluted Henry Chu, Your Majesty. Chu Xianqi ignored him and just lowered his eyes to look at Yang Shishir, who was still a little drifting. His eyes flickered. For a moment, Yang Shirshir thought she saw an evil light in his eyes. But she quickly denied this idea. How could the upright and proud King Shen have such a look? She must have seen it wrong. She didn't know what she was doing by calling all her brothers here. Could it be that? Her little face turned red slightly, and she couldn't help but raise her head and steal a glance at him. When she saw that he was still looking at her, she felt nervous. Don't dare to say anything. King Shen, looking at her so seriously. When he asked everyone to come over, did he plan to tell them that she would be his woman from now on? And announce her identity to everyone in the palace? I'm so looking forward to it. I'm so looking forward to it that my heart can't bear the load of rapid beating and stops moving. Your Majesty. She called out in a low voice, but couldn't help but look up and peek at him. Just one glance, and I suddenly fainted again. Really want to stay and serve me? His voice was low and magnetic, which made the little girl's face blush. Yang Shirshir bit her lip, resisting the feeling of shyness, and said softly. The Queen Mother will keep me, and I will be the prince's person from now on. I will serve the prince with all my heart and make the prince happy. Do you know how to make me happy? He leaned forward and came slightly closer. When he got closer, the powerful aura suddenly hit her face. Yang Shirshir felt like she was soaked in a pool of fragrant wine. And she was already drunk before she even drank. Shirshir will work hard. I and my brothers have been through life and death for so many years. The big palm fell, as if he wanted to touch her. Just when Yang Shirshir nervously thought that he was going to hug her, her shoulders suddenly tightened, and she was lifted up by him. And she was thrown to the burly man closest to him. Only when my brothers are happy, will I be happy. An evil light flashed in his eyes. And he looked coldly at the woman who screamed after falling into Fei Jing's arms. Those who want to be my king must first learn to serve me. Brothers. The girl's body is so soft. Fei Jing smiled and reached out to tear Yang Shirshir's clothes. Yang Shirshir never dreamed that things would turn out like this. She was so frightened that she screamed and pushed Fei Jing hard. I don't know whether it was because she was too strong, or because Fei Jing was so useless that she actually slipped off her body. However, there were more than a dozen secret guards guarding her, so how could Yang Shirshir escape? More than a dozen people formed a formation to block her in the middle. No matter which direction she fled, they could easily block her back. No. Don't touch me. Yang Shirshir turned pale with fright. When she looked back at Chu Xianqi in horror, he just stood aside and watched all this with cold eyes. She exclaimed, Your Majesty, don't do this. Didn't you hear what the prince said? A woman who is worthy of a prince must first learn to serve us. Fei Jing learned this tune really quickly, not to mention he looks very tough. And his figure alone is enough. It frightened the girl. As soon as these words were spoken, Yang Shirshir was so frightened that she almost fainted. I am the person designated by the Queen Mother to serve the prince. You dare to touch me? The Queen Mother will execute you. Looking at the big man walking towards her with a smile on his face, Yang Shirshir screamed again, Go away. No. Prince, don't be afraid, girl, I will love you. He said, opening his arms and walking towards her. No, just when Fei Jing came to her, Yang Shirshir was so frightened that she foamed at the head, rolled her eyes and fainted. Actually, I was really scared and fainted, and I was so disgusted by the vomiting at Momo. I was definitely not pretending. Why are you so unafraid? Fei Jing frowned her thick eyebrows, looked back at the prince who was standing aside, and was obviously a little impatient, scratched his head and said, It's not that my subordinates don't work hard at the performance. It's that this girl is not helpful at all. Henry Chu ignored it, turned around and walked towards the bedroom. From behind, Fei Jing's muttering voice came, "The seventh princess is still more fun." Hearing the words seventh princess, he felt a little warm in his heart. He tugged his lips lightly and smiled unintentionally without even knowing it. That girl is indeed much more fun. Your Majesty, what should I do with this girl? Dong Fengming followed up and asked. Return it to the Queen Mother. After leaving these words, he started to walk away. There was a rush of footsteps outside the courtyard, and one of the 12 riders hurried in. In a blink of an eye, he was in front of him. Your Majesty, something happened over there in Wuchen Pavilion. In King Chu's Xianhua Palace, in addition to King Chu, there were also concubine Yi and Queen Mother Xinang, as well as King Yun Chu Lu Yun and Queen Mother Xinang News, kneeling in the center of the hall. There was also a man wearing brocade clothes, who looked ordinary but looked like a playboy. When Chi-Chi was brought in by eunuch Chi, she saw these people. She was taken to the center of the hall. Looking at the King of Chu, who was sitting on a high position with an upright look on his face, and the Queen Mother Xinang, who had only glanced at her secretly. She hurriedly took 2 steps forward, bowed slightly, and said, "See you, Your Majesty, see you." The Queen Mother. Their eyes fell on her, and they looked at her carefully without opening their mouths. Chi-Chi is not upset. When she came here, she knew that there must be many dangers waiting for her. She was alone and weak, and it was still unknown whether she could get out smoothly. Although I don't know what crime they want to accuse her of, seeing Yi Fei and Chu Lu Yun, I probably already know what's going on. The presence of concubine Yi must be related to the break-up of the engagement. However, concubine Yi had already asked for the divorce papers from the King of Chu. Why should she be brought here now? Remarry? No need to think about it. From the corner of his eye, he caught sight of a man kneeling aside. His evil eyes were looking at him up and down, with the way a man looked at a woman. He didn't miss anything except a face that was completely uninteresting. She hated this look. King Chu and Queen Mother Xinang were also looking at her, but they just glanced at her with normal and stern eyes and then ignored her. In the end, Empress Dowager Xinang relaxed and said calmly, "Get up." There was deep disgust for her in his voice. Well, I have a bad reputation, just hate it if I hate it. There is nothing to expect from royal people like them. Chi-Chi stood up straight before saluting concubine Yi and Chu Lu Yun, who were sitting beside them, and said, "I have seen concubine Yi. And I have met Prince Yun."